Welcome, survivors, burnout community, and those just interested. It's Kelly Buboltz, trainer, author, speaker, and your burnout prevention mentor. Burnout is not taboo. It's our reality in this chaotic, fast-paced world. But we're not going to let it drive the narrative to our stories. We're going to do something about it. So let's dig in. In today's episode of Think Different, where we're going to meet the modern day workforce, where they're at, we're going to embrace this reality of change versus battling it. Now, in today's episode, I want to talk about a really progressive idea that's already here in different forms. And technically, it's already been here for a couple decades. And that's the rise of the gig workforce. So we have already seen gig workforce in different forms. We have seen them in short-term engagements, such as temp workers. We have seen this already as independent contractors. But now we're seeing more and more of this. Very specialized project work when we want to integrate systems. Very specialized workers when we want to get a certain project done. But what's happening is the new workforce, Gen Z, certain millennials in their skill sets, and then Gen X and boomers who have a very specialized skill set to sell, is moving into this gig economy. Now, what's cool about this is this allows us more opportunities to provide value back to different companies and then bring that back to our own company that maybe we're working full time. This also allows you as an employer to get a very special skill set for a very specific amount of time and then let it go. We all know as employers, and me as an HR leader, that when you have to hire someone and you hire them for a specialty and that project's done, now what do you do with them? Now you have a very expensive payroll manning and you don't know what to do with them, or they're not doing things at which level you hired them at. So this gig economy and workforce that's coming forward is going to help both sides. And in this Think Different episode, I want you to just open your mind. I want you to open your mind to the possibilities of what you could use this new gig workforce for so that we can embrace this reality, because it's becoming more prevalent in today's age and it will continue to grow. So what is kind of a gig economy or gig workforce is flexible or short-term projects and engagements with someone for their specific skill set. So this is similar to independent contractors. This is similar to fractional workers that we talked about in the other Think Different episode called Flexible Arrangements. Fractional workers are basically very part-time workers hired for a specific task, specific project, and they put in a certain amount of hours in per week or a certain amount of hours in per month, and their focus is only on projects. They're not being bogged down by a bunch of company meetings. They're not being bogged down with all the other type of emails and relations of the operation. They are there for a very specific job. Now, why this is prevalent, and I'm going to show you some of the stats that are coming up here, is in 2025, the workforce is going to start seeing a bigger shift. In 2025, 22% of the population will be Gen Z. These are your techies. These are your technological advanced type people. They are looking for the gig work. They don't want full-time 9-to-5 jobs. They're looking for personal freedom. They're looking for companies and projects that align with their beliefs. As you learn about in the other video called Why Your Team Needs Gen Z, they're very specialized. They're becoming very specialized. And this is fantastic to see because now they can be masters in something. And we can have some of these experts really come out of the woodwork. But 22% of the population next year will be Gen Z. 34% of the population next year is millennials. So again, maybe not as techy as Gen Z, but they're certainly up there. And they're realizing all the avenues in technology advancements in which they can sell their skill sets for projects. And I'll get to that in just a moment. 29% is Gen X, and I think that they have the skill set, they have the tribal knowledge that maybe is being lost as the workforce continues to exit out, such as the boomers. And they just have to step into the gig economy and don't really know how to do it yet. And then boomers, these are the people that are exiting to retirement. And just from an HR perspective, there's always 3 hurdles as people exit into retirement. Financials, are their financial setup. Healthcare, is their healthcare setup. Okay, those are 2 pretty easy transitions as long as you follow the flow and you prep ahead of time. But the third, The third is, what are they going to do with their time? And I will tell you, at least for the manufacturing industry, that the amount of work that boomers have put in over the years, they don't have a lot outside of work, or they're trying to rediscover themselves and who they are. So a great way to transition boomers is to take their skill set, really hone down the value that they bring, and put them into these gig type of positions, which means they come in and do specific projects, they come in and do specific initiatives, and then they leave. They don't get involved in everything else. What we're going to do is transition boomers out slower so that they can discover all this newfound time and what to do with it, but also they can provide value to the workforce. Now, as you probably saw in other Think Different videos, is the boomers can also re-enter the workforce through gig economy. And I'm going to be talking about a story in just a little bit about how much expense you can get rid of by doing that and the value that that can bring to your organization. But before we do, let's go talk a little bit more about the impact of a gig economy. So for workers, they're getting flexible arrangements. For workers, they're getting additional income. So we see this out on Fiverr, which is like a gig type of website. There's different type of creative platforms like Patreon. There's all different type of platforms in technology now in which you can put your skill set out there and create. It's not just, crafts and things like that out on Etsy. There's actual services in which you can provide professional value to businesses on a project basis. So knowing that, you can make more income. So there's a lot of millennial and Gen Z that's already doing that for extra income, either so they can have personal freedom or just because they like their skill set and working within that they're optimizing their skill set out on these third-party sites. And then, of course, they can diversify their skills. So if one specific person is really good at this profession, they can hone in on their skills and diversify out to different companies and different projects. So really staying in that energy zone. When we talk about workforce energy management, they're providing value and they're running with it. They're running with their passion. And I love that. So basically, they're one step away from an independent contractor. Now, let's talk about the value that the gig workforce can bring to businesses. And this is going to be a big one, is cost of an employee. So this year, Gallup Research has released what the cost of employee turnover is, what the cost of employee disengagement is. And this is, again, where we're bogging employees down with too much work. We just keep adding more. And some of these projects just need to get done. Some of these initiatives just need to move forward. And we can focus portions of our workforce to start to achieve these initiatives and get these things through the goal line. We can hire a specialist in a certain area instead of stressing our workforce out in something maybe that they don't have a skill set in. That's not their talent. That's not their passion. Hire someone out for this. So a turnover cost is 30% of an employee's salary. So again, let's just take the example that like a $60,000 employee and 30%, that's $18,000. $18,000, when you push someone too far, you push them out of their skill set, you add more, and they're like, I had enough, I'm doing 3 people's jobs, and they leave. Boom. $18,000 is on average is what that costs an employer. Now, disengagement, which is not talked about a lot, and it's kind of this mystery box, which we break down in the workforce energy management model. Disengagement costs us 34% of an employee's salary. So take that $60,000 employee again. Again, it's excluding benefits and all the other type of costs that come with employees, but say $60,000 salary, 34% of their salary when they're disengaged costs the company $20,000. So again, you have an employee, they're hired for this, but you also need this done and you need this done, but then you need this project and then you have this initiative, and you've just spread them so thin that they're not even doing the job that they were hired for anymore. So they start to disengage. You're losing $20,000 on average a year on disengaged employees. Now, here's a scary thing. In this Gallup research, they said that 30% of the U.S. workforce is engaged with their work. That means 70% of the U.S. workforce is disengaged at a cost of 34% of their salary. So when you're looking at this, and you look at gig workforce and you think that there's a cost to it, there's a bigger cost in disengagement. There's a bigger cost in turnover to employees. The other thing is when you can really hone into employees that enjoy doing gigs, enjoy focusing on their specific skill set, but maybe you only need them 20% of the time, you can start to shop them out to other people in your network, other people in your industry. So say I have a company, I need a data analyst, but I only need them about 20% of the time throughout the year as things come up, as we have to grab data from software, as we have to integrate systems. I don't need them all the time because we're going to automate the rest of the functions. Okay, I'm going to hire someone that's really good at data analytics, at system integration, and when we need them, we need them. And guess what? All the partners I have in this industry, all the different friends I have in my network and work peers, I'm going to shop them out because I only need them 20%. So I have 80% that needs to go elsewhere. I'm going to help them out because guess what? I'm going to be primary for them, and then they can shop out the rest of the projects. So again, it's a win-win for both businesses and for the workforce to really hit their sweet spot. So I wanted to show this. I've been showing this to other HR groups as I begin speaking about workforce energy management, is that the amount of money that we're losing because we're not meeting the modern day workforce where they're at is substantial. And it's very hard to get backing in HR for training development, get backing on these progressive ideas I'm talking about in the Think Different series. So here's the money. Here's the money and money talks. So when we look at disengagement and turnover, that should really be driving why we want to think different. Now, what was the force behind this? What was the force and the cause of the rise of this gig economy? Because there has always been independent contractors. There has always been part-time workers. Why is this project work coming up now? And there's a couple of factors. The first one is economics. So it is very difficult on a average middle-class wage right now to live. It's very strenuous on families. It's very strenuous on anyone that lives in expensive cities that can't afford the cost of living anymore. And so they have found alternate routes to make money, to pay their bills, to pay their groceries, and other sources of income. And it has been successful. They have more control over their schedule. They have more control on when they work, when they don't. They can work more, say, during the winter months because during the summer they do a lot of activities, or vice versa. They can move around wherever they are because usually project work is very remote. So it's allowing a lot of personal freedom. And so economics started it, and now it kind of gave a personal freedom and multiple avenues for people to use their skill set. So that was one factor that caused it to rise. The other factor is Gen Z and millennials are looking for flexibility. They're trying to find, how do I manage work-life balance? And you can't just say that anymore. You actually have to manage work-life balance because 64% of the workforce is in burnout because the juggle isn't working. So they have found an avenue, and that is focused project work, that is remote work. So say if they get in their flow and they want to get in that deep work and it's 7:00 at night, great. They're not a morning person. Work away. But when you had to force people into the office, into 9 to 5s, again, it's misaligned. So the Gen Z millennial type of demand for that flexibility and remote work, to find that work-life balance in whatever forms those come in, that was also a factor in the rise of gig type of workforce. The advancements in technology and the ease and use of these things to get your skill set out there, to sell your skill set, to show your project portfolio is much easier than it used to be. I think I'm on 3 different platforms for the work that I do just in training and development. So people can hire me for very specific things in training and development, and I can say yes or no. Payments run through these websites, and then I perform the work in the service. They provide a review, and we move on, and potential repeat business in the future. Before it was difficult to create a website. It was difficult to network with people. It was difficult to find a person. You had to know this person, and this person had to suggest you to that person. So with the advancements in technology, it's actually pretty easy to get your gigs and skill sets out there to say, hey, I can perform this. Hey, I can be your data analyst for that. And these are the companies I've worked with in the past. Hey, I provide an accounting service in which during month end, don't stress about it. I do month end all year round for different companies, and I can be your service for you. So hiring a third party has become pretty easy these days with the advancements in technology. Another factor in the rise of this gig workforce is the slow response from employers. So there's been different shifts in the workforce because of the work-life imbalance and just keep continuously adding more, the excessive change in both technology and operations and businesses and the shifts in economy that employers keep applying traditional methods forward, and they're not working anymore. So the workforce has found alternative avenues in order to manage their life, in order to manage their income and survive in this modern day work world, and it's working. And so the workforce is really driving this one, and that was a shift. Now, one area I think that we really saw shift during the pandemic was the boomers. So there was a lot of people retiring, and we knew that they would retire, but not for a couple of years yet. And that shifted forward pretty fast because of the pandemic. So employers, in response to that mass exit, said, can you work part-time? Can you come in for this project? Can you help us with just this plant expansion? And then you can be done. So it almost introduced these small gigs, these project loads into the workforce because they were not ready. The tribal knowledge has not been passed on. They were not prepared for replacements for these type of people in succession planning. So the exit of the boomers also caused this to speed up the gig economy. Now, I want to show you what you can do today to start building towards a gig workforce. Certainly, you don't want your whole workforce to be all project-based people because that can be kind of messy. Someone has to be driving things. Someone has to be kind of maintaining the business values and where you want to go and the whole purpose of these projects and initiatives and why are we hiring these people. So you still want your core workforce, but hiring specialists, hiring out for these certain gigs will get things moving faster. It won't stress your workforce out as much. And again, as you're working through these projects, there's some cross-training and internal development that's happening as employees are working with these specialists. But in order to do that, let's get over to results-oriented teams. The only way that a workforce will work with a gig economy like this, which means it's pretty consistent that you hire someone out for very specific projects, very specific type of work, is a results-oriented team. Because otherwise your workforce will gatekeep information, your workforce won't work well with them, and the project's going to be clunky. When I mention this type of workforce with clients, they tell me everything that went wrong in the past because they hired someone out. And it came down to these 5 factors. So these are pretty common for dysfunction when you hire an independent contractor, when you hire temps, when you hire people for certain type of gigs. And it's lack of SMART goals. So they don't have really clarity and deadlines and what is the purpose? How is this going to integrate? Who are the end users? So getting really clear on those SMART goals within your current team will help drive you forward to a gig workforce or being open to a gig workforce. The second one is employees managing their time. So sometimes you hire a third-party person for a very specific thing, but your team's not even doing their time correctly. They're maybe not working on the right things. They don't have a focus, or they're dumping on this third person, which they were never hired to do those things. So getting really in tune with employees managing their time and their focus and priorities is another great step towards supporting this gig workforce or being available to it. Leveraging technology, of course, that helps everything streamline. You don't need to send excessive emails and chats. That should all be automated when project files are uploaded. That should all be automated as deadlines reach. So leveraging technology for cross-collaboration inside and outside your company is going to assist in allowing this gig workforce to enter. Regular feedback. So I've seen, at least in manufacturing, that sometimes things go too far and they're missing the mark or they're way too left field. what checkpoint did we miss that it got so far? Who's managing this project? Who's managing this fractional worker? And so when you can give regular feedback, you can stay in line on the same path to the end goal. So you want your team and this gig workforce aligned on the same path. And then team accountability. Again, is everyone doing their part? The only way a gig workforce works is if everyone is doing their part and holding themselves accountable. One thing that I do want to mention, and a great story that I want to share, is what happened when my last employer embraced a portion of this gig economy, which was a fractional worker. It was a hard sell, but we finally got it because it was a boomer, and he was very specialized in his skill set, and we needed that skill set, and we weren't finding it in the workforce. So finally we got to a point where he said, hey, I'm retired, but I'm kind of bored. I still want a lot of flexibility so I can travel with my family. I obviously want to be retired, but I'm bored. And so we kind of stepped back and said, okay, in his specific specialty, in his skill set, which was within the engineering discipline, how many hours per week do we need that skill set, that very specific skill set that he just is phenomenal at? And it turned out to be about 15 to 20 hours a week that we could average over projects. Now, it could be higher one week, lower another week. So it would allow him to travel and manage his project load. So we agreed, I think it was 60 hours a month. And that's a fractional worker. It means he's not eligible for benefits. He's not eligible for a lot of employer-sponsored full-time employee things. Our workforce was billable about 70%. And he was 90% billable because of the focus of his work. And he would come in and he would do his work, or he would remote in, do his work, and he would be off. And then when their project load was low, he just wouldn't work. So it gave the employers so much flexibility because we didn't have to lay off someone because there wasn't enough project load. We didn't have to just fill their plate to fill 40 hours. If you know what I'm talking about, great. If not, go check out my video, Outcomes Over Hours, because we fill people's time with nonsense and non-value added work. And so it just shows that we got 20% more productivity because we really focused in on someone's skill set. And then again, we got that boomer tribal knowledge that is being exited right now, and we got to hone in on that. And he's training future workforce people. He's passing on that knowledge. And of course, we got huge productivity optimization. So that's a fractional worker example. Now, as you step into the gig workforce, make sure that you're checking on your labor laws, your state labor laws. I already saw that a few states are addressing the independent contractor laws because of the gig workforce that's coming up and the availability of the workforce within that. So you're going to see some shift, I think, in the law in favor of the workforce. But in order to do any of this, in order to really step into the modern day workforce, we're going to have to think different.
I know you're not lazy. Most people in burnout are high performers, those serving others before themselves. Don't discount this step today, the action in which you focus on your self-growth. Piecing together the puzzle is half the journey. Rediscovering yourself, energy, and establishing new habits is the other. Do not underestimate the untapped inner strength inside you. Explore more resources on my website to move from zombie mode back to liveliness. See you soon.